Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei become a Red Dragon King? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. It's been a week already. He woke up from his daydreaming by a shout from a girl that he was sparring right now with. It was his childhood friend Mia. It was a morning in Kuo Town School, and girls from Kendo Club had morning practice. For last week ever since his reunion with Mia, he has been ninjing their practices, and the girls loved that he helped them. They were able to spar with an opponent with higher level of body strength, or that was what said their trainer to them before allowing Ice to join them in practices. His school live for a week now has been pretty normal although. Between morning kendo practices, classes, club meeting and his alone time that consisted of sleeping, training, walking around city and flying, he was pretty satisfied with his present life and enjoyed it altogether. Heading back to match between Ice and Mia, it has just ended with Mia whining by making her friend fall out of bands. It became her most common strategy against him in their matches up till now. She understood after her first fight with him that in matter of pure strength, no one could beat him. On the other hand, both of them were able to enjoy each other company well. Mia was enjoying it more than Ice. Well, you got me again Mia, said Ice with shrug after taking of his helmet to wipe sweat of his face. It was only luck. If I would go up against you in frontal attack I would lose. Maybe but still, your technique is really beautiful. It shows how much work you put in kendo. At his words girl could only gone a light red, but by ending his sentence with his classic happy grin, Mia gone full red from ear to ear. Turning back to him to do not let him see her face she began to mumble something under her nose. They were both taken back by rest of team dropping their gear and going to exit of gym in which stood Yudo. Ice-kun, it's time for our club meeting. Right, sorry. Give me a minute you, I will take a quick shows and meet you outside. Okay. He shoot his angle-like smile, in his case devil-like I think. For me a friendship between First Prince and Second Prince was a big surprise. And yes, Issei Haidu has been named Second Prince of Kuo Academy after stopping the infamous duo of Matsumoto and Motohoma after spotting them peeking at girls in their changing room and giving them a good beat down, which he later left girls to add their own few swings of shinai. Most girls were starting their fan club for her friend and other were fantasies about a yaoi action between both prince. Even her best friend Murayama was starting to get their teases. And speaking of the devil she has just came to talk to her friend. It's really incredible that both of them became friends. I mean week ago they seemed like worst enemies. I know. But I'm glad he found a friend that he enjoys company of. Indeed it has been already a week since Issei Haidu has transferred to their school and it seemed like wheels of fate has begun to turn around. After classes most students have club activities to attend, our hero was one of them together with his friend he has just arrived in our club room that already all other members were accounted for. The last to arrive was Riaz that entered through the door leading to another room that Ice did not know what was for. Everyone we have a job. At her words Kaneko and Asia that were siding, stood in like a Keno and Yudo were started to prepare for their job. But there was only one box problem. Ooh. I don't want to go out. There's still sun outside. The problem name was Gasper. A half-vampire that is reassessing Bishop. What's going on? He asks Yudo out of curiosity, but the one to answer his question was Riaz. Gasper, we have been tasked with this by Grand Duke, we can't just not go because you don't want to. Said Riaz with her voice of authority and a hint of innocence. Ever since he has been freed from his room at the beginning of this year for school, they have been trying to make him lose his hikikomori way of living, but it seemed like it had no effect yet. Taking a pit at the boy Issei throws his bag at sofa comes near Riaz and Gasper and asks the young heir a question. Maybe I will go in his stead. This surprised everyone. After his statement he turns to Gasper and says, it's not like I don't understand a vampire. And besides, my job is to provide protection for your king, so I guess it's a win-win thing for both parties. Wouldn't you say so Butcho? After taking a moment to decide what to do and understanding that there were no real downside, she straightened up and looked at both boys. Very well but Gasper you need to send at least 3 of your vampires with us. Hey Butcho. Issei senpai thank you. With a look of satisfaction all members of Orc got in the room that Riaz came out of. What surprised Issei was that the room had a giant magic circle on the floor and nothing else. The transportation circle not to add very advanced. I guess you can go anywhere on earth with this type of magic. Ifufu. Very good Issei-kun. Butcho's brother is very overprotective and he has been spoiling her a little. Even getting her this from his friend after pleading and saying embarrassing things like she has been stopped from saying anything by red-cheeked Riaz outing her hands on her mouth. That is besides the point. What matters is what we have a very useful means of transportation. Wow, so even Mao is not able to overcome a pouting little sister, huh? With everyone inside the circle, Riaz and Akeno channeled their magical power into circle, and we have found ourselves right in front of what looked like an abandoned factory that is pretty close to Kuo town. This is where the target is. So this is your job. Taking care of stray devils. I say to Udo that stands next to me. Yup. We are asked from time to time to take care of some strays. Stray devils, a reincarnated devil that has disobeyed his master and run away from them. In most cases they turn mad and move according to their killing instincts. Issei himself in his time with Azazel killed a few of them on missions and as training exercise. Butcho, are you sure that target is in here? Asked Kaneko, still keeping her natural emotionless expression. Grand Duke said that he could be here, but Gasper. At her words, 3 black small bats appeared with glowing red eyes. Hi Butcho. And those 3 bats flight inside the factory. So she sends a scout first to make sure to do not use unnecessary powers. But Gasper still not reporting back. Issei decided to do a little of his own recon. He concentrated and his green eye changed to that of dragon. It seemed like no one noticed, but after a minute his eye changed back to normal and he began to move forward the factory, at which Asia pointed out. Isan, where are you going? Isn't it obvious? To take down the stray that is in center of building. His statement made everyone a little startled. You can't just charge in, besides we don't know that it is there. Let us wait for Gasper, and then Riaz was interrupted when Gasper's bats flew near her and gave her location of stray. To her surprise, it was exactly in the place Issei said it would be. How? Let's just say I have a good sense about those kind of things. And with that all of them decided to follow the security into factory. Inside it was darkness, not even a beacon light, but thanks to windows and ceiling, they were able to see center of building. What is this smell? A sweat one and a stinking one. Which should I eat? The voice was that of a woman, but what appeared was indeed a woman, the top at least, the bottom well not so much. It was a body of a beast. I think I'm going to be sick, Issei says that while holding one of his hand on his stomach. Stray devil Visora, by orders of Grand Duke we are here to punish you for betraying your master. Prepare for death. How you can try, little princess, but you shall not kill me. It charges for word Riaz, but is stops in her tracks by a person holding her tail. You shall not harm Butcho. Hi. And Kaneko throws Visser up into sky, where on ceiling with his blade prepared, waited Udo that the moment she was thrown, lunged himself at her and made a clean cut at her arm that dropped to the ground far from the center of building. DCH. At his action, stray did the only thing it could at the moment, it grabbed Udo leg with its tails and thrown him to the ground with Omen's force. At the moment he made contact with the ground, Riaz said her first orders out loud. Akeno. Hi, Butcho. With her acknowledgement she launched a ferocious lightning magic at her with, and by the time Visser made an extinguishing sound of pain, Aken started to make a blissful face of ecstasy. Ah, you fufu. Miss Stray Devil, could you please give me more of that first-class scream of pain? She ended her pleas with a playful smile. Issei could just look at the scene before him with a puzzled expression that had a hint of fear with it. Before he could say anything, Riaz took a voice in Akeno's protection. You don't need to worry. Akeno acts like that only against her opponents. There's no need to worry. Even if you say so, or more like, isn't it already time to finish that thing? While still looking at the action between Akeno and Visser, he notices Asia healing Udo with her sacred gear. It seemed as because of the fall he has broken a few ribs, and thanks to her twilight healing after a few seconds he was back to normal. Akeno, that is enough. With her stern voice, Riaz motioned for her queen to stop her assault on the stray that was fried enough to look like a fried chicken dish. Urara. It seems that I have shown an ugly side of myself to our guest. No, you just made me realize that you are an avatar of words. Scary. Moving to the center, Riaz looks down at a little crater that Akeno's attacks against Visser made, and at the same time Visser looked up to see Riaz only charging a black ball of energy with red aura around it. Any last word, Stray Devil Visser? Kill me? She says. As you wish. And with that she dropped the ball of energy and Visser's body disappeared in an instant. Making her way back to her peerage, she did not notice a shadow leaning in the darkness that launched itself at Riaz with an incredible speed. She did not have enough time to notice it and was about to be pieced by it, closing her eyes and awaiting the attack, but nothing has happened. She opens her eyes to see only one person in front of her, and that was Issei. With his left hand holding what looked like an arm with very sharp nails, she noticed that his arm was covered by a red piece of metal. So that is the gauntlet of Red Dragon Emperor boosted gear. She looked at it very carefully, observing its entire shape. The sharp look of it and beautiful pure red color of it, and noticing a green jewel at the center of his hand. It was the same color as his eye. What she did not notice was that the arm that attacked her began to burn up and dispersed after a moment, and the position she was in. You can let go now, you know. At his words she looked at herself, and the color of her face starts to change into a bright red. She sees herself climbing to her saver like a glue to a paper. At that she jumps back a few steps and turns back to him to do not let him see her face. Thank you. She says with a slit-embersed voice, trying to be as quiet as she could. Noticing her embers meant Issei chuckles at her slit-cute action. Don't worry about it. He says that while patting her hair a little, which made her even more emberized. Going back to their team, Issei notices in a shadow black feathers that resembled that of a bird. That's trailing back a little. He decided to ignore it for now and come back here later to take a closer look at it. With job done, everyone made their way back to the place they appeared in and teleport back to club room. All of them glad for not a problem during their mission, with an Issei that still thinks back to the feather he saw back at the factory and starts to wonder what it meant. After Orc left the factory, two shadows that observed a fight between devils descended to ground, folding their wings back. Even though we did all those things to get that start to take down those devils, it couldn't even take down one of them. Says first shadow that looked like a child. It doesn't matter. We got the infosec needed for our plan to work. Let's go back. Says the other figure, a slit taller than the first. Okay. But to think that Azazel same really sent security to protect that girl, aren't you a little jealous, Ree? Her words stopped at the sharp object that pointed her way at her throat. One more word and I will cut that impudent mouth of yours. But that the figure Stopes talking at took it back to the sky. Little person mumbling something under her nose while the other shadow drifted back to image of Issei that she saw in factory. Soon I will be able to stand next to you, my beloved dragon. Next day Issei decided to tell Riaz about his finding in factory the other night, but before he could do that he decided to stop by at the gym to talk with Mia. On his way there he noticed two persons going around the gym. To make sure that it was not any danger he decided to follow them, and when he came around gym, he found the infamous perverted duo of Motohama and Matsuhata doing what they were best at, being perverts. What are you guys doing? He asked them while standing next to their get-awared. You. What does it look like? Well, truth be said, you look like you are trying to pick on girls in their changing room. He answered their question flatly. Of course we are. It is man's job to pick on girls while they're changing. At their statement Issei could just sweat drop at the stupidity of those two boys. But he did not have enough time, for he was interrupted by a girl that he knew all too well. What do you think you're doing here? Mia said in a cold voice that sent shivers down the spine of each boy. Mia. Hey, I was just asking those two the same question. He said while still shivering. Her looks around the corner and her eyes change from pissed off to that of enraged dragon. You again? I told you last time that if I find you here again you will face fate worse than death. But that the two perverts have scrammed and only Issei and Mia were left in the place. With one of them trembling while waiting for the other reaction and the other one standing tall and still holding a shinai in one hand. Finally turning back, the girls start saying. Kunlo, what were you really doing here? She asks with a dangerous tone. Like I said. I followed them here. He explains. Okay, but still, so that you won't even think about those kind of things I will beat some sense into you. With her playful tone she starts to aim shinai at her friend's head and without a doubt swings it at him. Wait. I didn't do anything. I'm innocent. He shouts and she starts to easy up and puts back her weapon. Very well. I will forgive you this time, but let me catch you here again and you won't be able to sit on that butt of yours for a week, got it? Gulp. Yes ma'am. Good. Now then, see you tomorrow, Ikun. Mia leaves confused Issei to think for a second and make a conclusion what she fully meant, and he started to shake from top to bottom once more. Note to myself, never, ever piss Mia off. I would be killed. Then as on Kwai he remembered that it all started because he wanted to talk to her. He stands up and runs after her, catching up to her in no time. Mia. Wait. He shouts and now confused Mia turns back to him and skips in surprise of how close her friend was. Well, what is it? Listen, be careful when going back home, okay? I heard there were some weird things happening lately. Come on, there is no way that something like that is either way. Be careful, okay? Right now she could see a look full of worries on Issei's face and decided to listen to his advice. Fine. I will. Thanks for worrying about me. She shoots him a worm smile and he immediately starts to flush a red color on his face. Aha, okay, well then see you, Mia. He runs off and she can only look at his back and smile. See you, stupid Ikun. Thinking. Later on in Orc's room, after Issei explained that he found fallen angel feathers and what they mean. Maybe they've joined forces with a stray from yesterday. Issei suggested with a brief shrug of his shoulders. Not likely. Even if a devil becomes a stray, they wouldn't ever join forces with an angel, not even a fallen one. Ria stated as she shook her head lightly, to which a silence surrounded the group and made them all muse to themselves of what could be going on. What if they were used for something completely different? Kaneko spoke up silently, which caused everyone to immediately turn toward her with blinking eyes. After a moment of this idea sinking in for them, Yudo slowly gave a nod of his head in agreement. Actually, it sounds like it could the truth. It may have been just a big diversion in order to keep us from realizing what they're really after. He said as he looked down briefly in thought during his words. Well, most fallen angels are ordered by old man Azazel to look for sacred gear users. They then observe and talk with them in order to decide whether to bring them in or just leave them be. Issei said silently as he rested his chin between his finger and thumb. Though no one knew of this information beforehand, all of the orc members decided to believe the Grigori agent. Yet while everyone thought about this, a voice spoke up from the doorway and caused each of them to turn to the source. If that is correct, then this must be about a sacred gear user in your territory areas. Sona said with her usual silent voice. Said girl wearing her slightly rounded glasses, of which she adjusted on the bridge of her nose. Along with these, she wore the usual school uniform on her slim figure. Her black hair was styled in a short bob cut and her piercing violet eyes stared at everyone in the room. All the while, another teen girl came up behind her, whom had long, straight black hair that extended all the way down to her knees. She had split bangs and heterochromia eyes, with the left one being violet and the other having a light brown color. This girl also wore the Kuo Academy girls' school uniform, yet she also had on a pair of blue semi-rimmed glasses with square lenses. This is an unexpected visit, what brings you here today, Sona? Ria's questioned as she crossed her arms under her chest and raised a brow slightly. Sona. As in Sona Sitri, second daughter of the Sitri house and little sister of current Leviathan. Issei thought to himself with slightly narrowed eyes, him having been informed about all the relatives of nearly every high-level demon. Though one thing that made him soon sweat drop was the fact that Azazel had also told him that many of them tend to spoil their siblings like crazy. Issei having met the current Lucifer numerous times during meetings while acting as Azazel's bodyguard, which was usually enough to make him question this a number of times. Hello Riaz, I wish to discuss our little problem together. Sona began as she stepped into the room fully along with the other girl. Though both of them soon shifted their gaze over to Issei with slightly narrowed eyes, as well as to see this new bodyguard of yours. She continued, her stepping a bit closer to said teen. It is an honor to meet one of heavenly dragons. The Welsh dragon, correct? Securite Drag, I believe his name is. As well as Yauhis Bear, Issei Hayato-san. Sona greeted silently with a short nod of her head. My name is Sona Sitri, and this is my queen, Tsubaki Shinra. She introduced as she gestured between herself and the teen girl behind her. As the president and vice president of the student council, we welcome you to this school. She finished with very professional sounding voice and a bow toward him. It's a pleasure to meet you as well, Sitri-senpai. I hope that I won't be creating too many problems for you both or the school. Issei responded in a polite manner, to which he brought his hand out to shake. However, this was quickly interrupted as a teen boy came between them. Kaicho. Please be careful. He works for fallen angels. They said quickly and with an urgent voice. Saja had saved our lives during Kakabiel's incident and has been in this school for over a week. Thus far no harm has come to anyone by his hand, so you may calm yourself. Sona said in her own relaxed tone as she briefly closed her eyes. But Kaicho? I still think that Saji began, yet was silenced by said girl bringing a hand up in order to prevent him from continuing on. Though Issei raised a brow to this, he immediately figured out that this other teen boy must also be on the student council. Him being a tall individual with a messy, dirty blonde hair and grey eyes. He was wearing the Kuo Academy boys' school uniform, albeit without the blazer, and his sleeves were rolled up. He appeared to be around the same age as Issei himself, though what he could see, the teen wasn't entirely the mature type. After his conclusion from his observation, he then looked to the teen girl that Sona had walked it with. She mentioned her name was Tsubaka, but I haven't really heard much about her overall. I wonder if there is any information about her powers or such. Issei thought briefly before looking over to Riaz as she spoke up. Sona, I don't mind you coming over here to talk. But being a person in your position, don't you have other places you need to be? The red-haired girl questioned with a slight tilt of her head to the side. Yes, but I came here on business, so don't worry. Besides, it seems that a few black-winged pests were in the cathedral on the edge of city. Sona said as her eyes narrowed slightly in order to get right to the point. Indeed, we're in fact discussing exactly how we'll deal with them. Riaz added with a brief nod. As long as they remain inside the church, there is little both our sides can do. Sona commented with her own nod as the long-time relationship truly showed between these two as they spoke, as if knowing what the other would say before saying it. I have been sent here to protect Ria's Gremory from members of our side. So therefore Issei started, yet let his words hang as if to get all of them to realize his offer. A brief moment after his pause, Riaz turned to him with blinking eyes and a bit of surprise. You mean you'll take care of all this? She asked quickly before she slowly raised a brow in question. I guess since it's your job, you're kind of forced to do it, huh? She more have stated than asked as she clearly showed a bit of doubt in his motive. Of course. It's what I was sent here for, so I might as well get it over with. Issei said with a light shrug of his shoulders, him immediately noticing the girl's doubtful gaze. After a brief moment of considering all the possibilities, Riaz just let out a heavy sigh and nodded her head in response to him. Very well then. If you insist on doing this, then I will accept your offer and thank you for take care of this matter. She said silently, her then leaning back in her chair and closing her eyes. You're very welcome, my lady. Issei answered with a tone that showed that he was planning to do this regardless of her answer. Meanwhile, on the other side of school, Mia was just exiting the front gate. Yet she soon paused in her steps and glanced back toward the school with a slightly raised brow. I wonder if something happened. Could there have been some kind of trouble? She thought briefly before eventually continuing on her way. Ah. Mia. Someone called out from the side, to which Mia turned toward them with blinking eyes. This person was one of her best friends since middle school, Yuri Murayama. She was not only a fellow student at Kuo Academy, but also the vice captain of the girls' kendo club. Is something wrong? Yuri continued on with a tilt of her head. No, everything's fine, was just thinking. Mia responded with a clearing of her throat. Are you still thinking about that incident with Issei-kun? I really doubt he would peek at us with those two perverts. I mean, he is nothing like them, he's more like Kiba-kun. The vice captain said with a small smirk and wave of her hand at the beginning. Oh, Yuri. Mia began with a light giggle. How wrong you are. She finished with a small, yet knowing smirk. What do you mean? Yuri questioned with a raised brow as they started to walk together. When we were little, he would always try to peek at me when I was bathing. And there were a few times he was investigating and looked through my stuff. Incidentally, he usually only ever found my panties. Mia said with a heavy sweat drop, yet she kept her smile, while also remembering all the times she smacked his head for doing such things. Hahaha. Really? Issei-kun was like that? Yuri asked with a laugh, her even holding her stomach in the process. I think every guy is like that. The other girl said with a shrug and wave of her hand. After a few more stories and laughter from the two, they soon noticed a young girl approaching them from the opposite direction. This girl had blonde hair that was tied in two pigtails, sharp blue eyes, and wore a gothic Lolita dress. Her having a rather devious smirk on her very cute features, yet it was the heavy atmosphere that seemed to surround the girl that caught the attention of the two teens. They both then turned a corner quickly, them hoping to escape the feeling of dread that seemed to radiate from the small blonde girl. However, the moment they went down this adjacent road, the two immediately came up to a tall and buxom woman with brown eyes, as well as long, navy blue hair that obscured her right eye. Her attire consisted of a violet trench coat-like top with a wide collar, a matching miniskirt, and black-heeled shoes. The trench coat top was open at her chest, giving view to her breasts and cleavage. She also wore a gold necklace around her neck. Pardon us, but we need you two to come with us, now. Goth girl said from behind the two teens. But while Mia was about to fight back, she suddenly felt her consciousness slipping away along with Yuri's. This led for the schoolgirls to fall unconscious into the arms of the other two, to which they then flew off quickly with the black feathered wings that came out from their backs. What they didn't see, however, was the small creature observing the whole situation. It quickly flying up into the air and heading toward the school, while the girls flew off in the opposite direction. Once the meeting between the student council and the orc was over, Issei let out a heavy breath in exhaustion. Him making his way to doors to head out, yet he quickly paused when one of the club's windows opened suddenly and allowed a small creature to come flying in. Yet it flew too fast and ended up bumping the edge of the table in the middle of the room and crashed on top of it. Everyone blinked a few times in surprise, yet soon surrounded the small beast and looked at it with a slightly raised brow. It was a little red dragon with emerald green eyes and a wide underbelly, but every girl looking at it couldn't stop themselves from thinking one word about it: cute. Sieg? Issei asked with a raised brow as he joined the circle around the table. What are you doing here? Ow. The little dragon called out as he flapped his wings and flew on top of Issei's shoulder. This led yet to another moment of every girl thinking cute as the small dragon started to lick his master's face. Though Sona snapped out of this cute trance and cleared her throat quickly. Hayato-kun, could you explain what that is? She questioned quickly, her turning back to her usual stone self, as she didn't want to believe she was calling something cute. His name is Sieg, he's my familiar. He had just hatched when I was traveling through the forest where familiars reside. Though I was originally helping him to find his parents, after a while, he took a liking to me and I guess he saw me as his new parent. Then again, the fact that I have a dragon inside of me likely helped with that as well. He explained while petting the little dragon on his head. This making all the girls coo in response as the image before them was just too adorable for them to resist. Although Issei started up again as he raised a brow and looked to his dragon companion. I seem to remember leaving you at Grigori. So how and why did you come here? He asked with a slight tilt of his head in question. Immediately following these words, Sieg started to cry out with silent roars and growls. But while no one else in the room understood, Issei's eyes widened in response to what his familiar was telling him. What? Are you sure? He all but demanded as his eyes widened a bit further, which earned him a gow. In response. But this, the brown-haired teen narrowed his eyes and quickly heading for the doors. Though he paused in the doorway, he didn't turn around as he said his next words in a serious tone. We might have a problem. In the middle of night one lone figure was running in the forest that was located on the borders of Cowtown. The figure started to slow down as the trees thinned and revealed a lone building. An abandoned church, once a place for families to pray to God. It had been replaced by a newer church in middle of city right next to the graveyard in which resides the parents of Red Dragon Emperor Issei Haidu. That said boy was now standing in front of the church, least 20 meters from its main entry. Okay then. He thinks. Partner, as much as I like a little destruction, let's stick to the plan. I have a bad feeling about this. Said his lifelong partner Drige from inside his prison, one of 13 Longinus boosted gear. I know that. He said a little annoyed, but still this plan is just too much reckless even for my taste. 1 hour before. And that's pretty much the situation. Summing it up, Issei ended the translation of his young dragon familiar, Sieg's story to the rest of Orc and few members of student council that were present in the club room. To approach and even abduct members of this school, those fallen angels do not know their place, said student council president Sona Sitri with a distasteful frown on her face. I agree, but I cannot think of a reason why they would do such a thing without having something to gain from this, ended the basic statement from Sona's queen as well as vice president of student council Tsubaki Shinra. Either way, they have taken members of our school as well as friends of my cute little servant Asia, that alone deserves punishment, said with her arms crossed around her ample chest president of Occult Research Club and the one ruling this area and world of magic, next heiress of Gremory clan Ria's Gremory. Well, if they are following the standard orders of Grigiri, they mostly took them because of a possibility of them having a sacred gear, stated Issei as he knew how fallen angels work. Be that as may be, it's pretty weird, abducting was certainly not a part of orders, and if they do that it would be more likely a male, since most fallen angel girls just want a taste of them. I whispered quietly. Either way we need to save them. And to do that we need a plan, stated Riaz as she activated a magic circle. And it was the entire Kuo town in a holographic vision. Now then the angels are stationed in this abandoned church. It is surrounded by thick forest and is placed atop of a hill, so it is difficult for a long and complicated plan, not to mention the time. So we are going to attack them by frontal assault, led by she shifted her eyes to young Dragon Emperor. Since it's a church, and not to mention that a barrier is most likely placed around the perimeter. Exactly, and following you will be my peerage and me myself. After destroying the barrier we will follow you in, she said with a smile and closed eyes. Wait. What? You circa he was caught halfway in sentence as the heiress continued talking. I'm sorry Sona, but I will take care of this business. Of course. But I will provide a backup in a form of barrier of my own origin around the area. We can't have some civilians enter there, not to mention masking your battle against the enemy, answered the student council president with an emotionless nod. Wait, you can't go. What if this is some kinds of trap to lure you out? They could be the underlings of Kakabia looking for revenge, I stated with panic at the way their conversation was heading. Isn't that what you are here for? Not to mention that those girls have a possibility of having a sacred gear. If that is true then I will not miss an opportunity to gain new servants, she said, ending her sentence with a devious grin, at which I just couldn't help but sweat drop. Truly as expected of a high-class devil Oju-san. She won't miss an opportunity to milk everything she can from a situation, said young man as he got closer to the barrier around the church. Yes, that's the center of barrier. Trailing off he looked at the cross which was atop the church's main tower. Looking back at barrier he took a deep breath to calm himself down before straightening his posture and fixating his eyes on the goal of this mission. Wait for me Mia. Let's go, Drake. It's time to go a little wild. Oh. It's been a while since you made that kind of face, partner. But one thing is correct, it's time to go wild. Stated the Welsh dragon, and on cue he took one step forward towards the barrier. In a split second he was surrounded by many people dressed in dark green color robes which covered their entire body. Who are you? Get out of here. Issei started to hear all of them screaming things at him, but all had the same meaning. For him to leave. But he stood unfazed by their words and kept a straight face. Hey, didn't you hear? One of the man tried to touch the young man, but was in return thrown back into the group of rogue priests. At that signal all of them held their spears and thrust them into the place where Issei stood. In response he jumped and started moving from place to place while using heads of priests as stepping stones. After a few steps he decided to aim at the cross. So he jumped as high as he could while using one of rogues as a starting point. He was able to jump so high that he was practically at the same height as the tower. While gaining altitude he moved his right arm up and formed an imaginary pistol with his hand. His two fingers were supposed to act as barrel while the big finger acted as a trigger. At the moment he could see the cross right in front of him. A red magical circle appeared in front of it. Bang. Like a child playing a game he made a move in which trigger closed down and he moved his arm upwards. In that moment a high amount of magical power was released and like a bullet, headed straight for the cross which resulted in its destruction. The barrier around the place started to disappear. His job was complete, those were his thoughts while falling and landing on his knee. That moment caused surprise in the enemies in front of him, which he used to manifest boosted gear, boost his speed, and like a shooting star across night, and speed towards the entrance to the church. Hang in there just a bit more, Mia. I'm coming. Ria's pav. Ara. He is quick on the job, is he not, but you? Said the queen standing next to me, Akeno. Indeed. But he is too rash, I said as I saw the young Securite head straight for the church entrance. Hiba, Kaneko, take care of the priests and join up with Issei after that. Gasper provide cover for the two. Yes, but you. All three of them responded with determination and flew down into the center of battlefield. Then the assault began. With an amazing speed granted to him by my night piece, Kiba cut down most of the enemies that surrounded the three young devils. The ones that were a little further away were quickly attacked by a barrage of strong, precisely aimed punches of the power type piece, the Rook Kaneko. But during the assault on one side, the other side of rogues decided to take their chance and attack them from back. They were stopped in their tracks by some unknown force. The truth was that their time had been stopped by Gasper and his sacred gear Forbidden Valor View that was activated by his strong feelings of not wanting his friends to get hurt and further boosted by his magic enhancement traits of Bishop. While looking at my dear servants doing such splendid job, I can't help but be proud of them, especially Gasper that is such a scaredy cat, it made him become a cross-dresser. Well, I can't really complain since it suits him much, but still. Rias, Akeno says, bringing me back to the present from my thoughts. We may have company. I look back and see two female fallen angels. One dressed in a gothic Lolita dress and the second one in a purple business suit with a very small skirt, but the suit seemed it would burst open any minute, not being able to withstand the size of her bust. Oh, seems like the scum down there are having a bit of trouble with those devils, said the businesswoman. In the end they are just humans, Calwarner. Even with the power we grant them they are still just weak humans, barked back the smaller girl with a higher tone to the now identified Calwarner. I guess you are right, Midlold. After ending their little banter both of them directed their attention back at us. So, what are 3-5 devils doing in our base? Asked Calwarner. Aren't you the ones who provoked us by kidnapping a student, a friend of ours? Not to mention that you did it right in front of our school. I stated the obvious. Well, I may not know them personally, but I heard a great deal of praises from both Asia and other students. I hear a little whisper from behind me that belonged to Asia who hid behind me after the fallen angel's arrival. Why did you take Cadis and Mayamura-san? I was taken back as it's the first time I have heard Asia raise her voice at anyone no matter who they were. Well, that is, Issei Pav. Faster. I need to be faster. Those were my thoughts at the moment. I was already near the entrance to the underground chamber that was near the central of this church. I speed down the stairs and came upon the chamber where more than 50 rogue priests were doing some kind of chanting. I look where the chants were meant to go, and what I saw made blood froze in my entire body. I saw my childhood friend Mia in a short white nightdress. If we weren't in this situation, I would be very excited to see how she well developed in some areas of her body, chained to a cross. Near her was a man wearing a grey coat laughing like a maniac, but what surprised me was that the woman in front of Mia had long black hair and was dressed in what looked like S&M armor had a lightly glowing green orb of light. The moment she turned around her face started to change from emotionless stone into a sun of happiness as she saw the one who interrupted their ceremony was me. I myself was surprised to see her here, the person who I saved, and ever since then was most loyal to me to the point of obsession as my mentor liked to call it. Ray? Is that you? I asked in disbelief as to why would she be here. Issei. Issei. She screamed and tried to flee down to me but was stopped by the man mentioned previously. Now, Rainer. It is not appropriate to do not finish the task given to you and do as you please. You don't seek. By Securite. It has been a while. Yes. Last it was when the medical team took you to infirmary after Iniki beat you to pulp. I answered remembering that moment when he hit the wall after Iniki's light punch. Yes, well, I need to say that after the humiliation I suffered from that man my rank and respect among my own fell dramatically, he answered with a little malice. Having a 12-year-old kid kick your ass makes it pretty clear as to why that happened. Yes. I suppose so. But thanks to that I was found and taken into Kakabiel Sama's faction and become one of their leaders. For that I am grateful. I see. Still does not clear up why you took those girls. I pointed at where Mia was, and what did you even do to them? Oh, is it not obvious? I just took what was given to her by God when he said that it all hit me at once. This place, green orb of light, and the reason is why Mia was not moving. You couldn't what? Reap her sacred gear from her body which resulted in her death. Why Securite, that's exactly what I did. Ha ha ha. Ria's Pav. Taking the sacred gear from its original host if you do something like that. Akeno shouts as the two female fallen angels told us their plan. They'd die. Well, it's not like power comes without a price. Besides, it's just one less human trash in the world. Does it really change anything? Asked us the gothic Lolita angel Midlet. At her words, Asia broke down on her legs and stated crying for the loss of her friends. At such a scene, my queen quickly reacted and hugged her tightly, knowing how hard it is to lose someone close. But their actions of beautiful sisterhood were broken down by a maniacal laugh from the two fallen women. What? Little blonde devil girl knew those two girls. Well, this is a masterpiece, Nakala Werner. Really? Who knew that devils had such a soft spot for humans, answered the other girl. As they continued to laugh, I remembered that after transferring into the third-year middle school division of academy, Asia was all alone. But then one day she came back saying that she finally made two friends, and another day she introduced both of them to Akeno and I. It was Miyame, Mura and Caddis. At that moment something in me broke and I started to release a little amount of my aura, which started to grow as longer the angels were laughing. Ooey, I started to make them pay attention to me. You made my little sister cry just so you could laugh and obtain power, is that correct? That's exactly what we did. One of them answered with a mocking voice. I see, then I move my hand upward and show them a crimson ball of swirling black energy, be gone. And with that said, both were overcome by my power, not knowing that their struggles were all in vain. Everything that comes in my way will crumble and disappear into nothingness. Normal POV. Same time in underground sanctuary, hahaha. So tell me, how does it feel, Security? Not being able to save one human girl. At the time he started to talk, both Kiba and Kaneko had entered the sanctuary. While laughing in maniacal way, Donasek was uppercut by red metal gauntlet which sent him upwards into the air. In a moment he stabilized himself and looked down only to find that no one was there. He looked back and once more he saw red metal before being sent flying again, this time into surface. Right after the exit of the fallen, his attacker Issei descends onto the stage near Rainer and addresses her. Ray, I don't know how you are involved in this, but get Mia down from that church and onto the ground, then help her. Got it? He asked her, but as she knew him, it was obvious that it was not a question but an order, given to be done. Of course, she replied with a smile and a bit of red cheeks. You, Kaneko-chan. I leave this place to you. Count on us, replied both Kaneko and Kiba while preparing to engage the enemy troops. And with that in mind he has made his resolve and decided to end this. He moves his gauntlet up and shouts, balance break. Welsh dragon. Balance breaker. But that announcement Issei held his gauntlet up high and around his body started to appear deep green gems from which a red metal started appearing all around his body. Moments later Issei stood in a full armor, minus the helmet which then appeared, starting with top. It covered his mouth and next were his eyes that concealed by green eye shields. When the lights of transformation died out, Issei stood in a massive red armor with green gems on his joints and on his chest. It was the armor of Red Dragon Emperor Balance Breaker. Boosted gear, scale mail. Then he shoot upwards to go after Donasek through the tunnel he created by punching him. Both devils were glad that such a powerful being was on their side, but they quickly shifted their attention back to the rogue priests that stood in front of them with their weapons ready to engage them. Just before both parties met, a red spear pierced one of the exorcists, and when they looked up, they saw the fallen angel that seemed to know Issei standing with a light spear in one hand and the girl Mia's body another. Lady Rainer, what are you doing? One of the priests shouts out. Be quiet, you lolly worms. I'm doing what I was told to do by my one and only master, Issei-sama. She shouted out, which made everyone present look at her with fear. Only the two devils wondered what is the relationship between her and the Security. Same time in the church, Donasek was starting to get up only to be stopped by a red metal egg that was placed on center of his chest. Now then, how about I repay you for what you did to my childhood friend? Donasek's eyes widened when he heard the voice that came out of the metal armor was the young human that he mocked just moments ago. He tried to create a light spear in both hands but was stopped when the force which Issei pressed his leg on him increased dramatically to the point his opponent started spilling blood. Then after removing his leg from the body, Issei grabbed him by throat and lifted him in the air. The doors of the church opened wide and from there Riaz, Akeno, Asia and Gasper came. From the back Kiba, Kaneko and Rainer appeared with both girls in their hands. One was carried by Kiba and the other by Kaneko. The female fallen was still holding the green sphere of light. Don't get in my way, senpai, he's mine, said Issei to President of Orc. Do not worry, Issei, I'm not planning on getting in way, on contrary I came to give you some news. She held up her clenched fist and after releasing it a few black feathers have begun to slowly fall to ground. The two subordinates of his, I took care of them. After hearing that the half-conscious Donasek was both furious and surprised. Furious because he lost two members of his team and surprised because of how he lost them. He knew that they were not tremendously strong, but still they were able to put up a good fight most of the time. As expected of daughter of the Gremory house, now then Issei shifts his sight back from Riaz to Donasek. He moves his hand up and then it appears. A flame-like red orb, but it wasn't just red. To be more precise. It was a darker shade of red, yes, almost crimson even. At that sight Riaz was taken a little back. That flame looked just like her family's power of destruction. But her question was, why did it seem familiar? Back with Issei he ignited even more of the wired flame and it almost covered the entire palm of his hand. Goodbye, fallen angel Donasik. It was not a pleasure to have known you. But those words he moved his hand closer to his chest and put the flame on him. At that moment his entire body was covered in the flame and started to burn. The fallen shouted at the top of his lungs, but it was futile. After a few minutes there was not even a trace of him left, not even ashes from the fire that devoured him. Then Issei released his armor only for his gauntlet to be left and steps back to get himself right next to the body of his friend, now laid on ground without a pulse, lifeless. Right after him hurried Asia and after her the rest of Orc that was not present near the body. She started crying tears of sadness at sight of her friend's dead body. Issei on the other hand had a calm face, shifting his gaze from body to the glowing orb belonging to Raynor, and after making up his mind, he stood up and moved to the noble devil of Orc. Riaz Gremory. He started saying and did a thing no one thought possible, he bowed, please, save her. This was a surprise to the young heiress. Holder of legendary being, one who put the battlefield of three great factions into chaos together with his white counterpart, Welsh Dragon Red Dragon Emperor, Securite, Drag Issei Haidu, was bound to her and asking for help. And she was not Riaz Gremory if she let this opportunity to have him owe her pass. Very well, but you understand what you're asking me? She will no longer be a human. I know, but this is the only way I can think of right now, and I would rather have her hate me and be alive than let her die an unjustified death. Very well. But you will owe me one, she answered. He nods and shifts to the remaining fallen. Bray. Give her sacred gear back. He orders her and she does as she is told without any questions asked. After putting her sacred gear back in her, she was placed in center of church and in front of Riaz as she put 3 pawn pieces on her and starts chanting. I, Riaz Gremory, order thou to rise once again and walk amongst us as one of us. When she finished the chanting the pawns glowed with a red light and covered the church. Issei Pav, the strong wind. That's what I feel, no, it's the only thing I can feel right now, other than an occasional drops of some liquids. One on my face and other on the ground. I could make out a smell as well after a few moments. Smell of blood. My blood. After what seemed like minutes I started to make out quiet voices, which became louder later on. Save him if please. Save. I couldn't make out what happened after that, only that I saw a glimpse of a bright white light mixing with a dark horror covering, no embracing me. I shoot out into a sighting position looking around. It's my room, I think. Yes, my room, I just returned the home of my childhood. After my parents' death Azazel bought it out to make sure it stayed for me as a future home, a place to return. A 2-floor building for a family of 4, or at least it was supposed to be like that. But knowing Azazel I should have guessed that he wouldn't do some remodeling. Now it was a 4-floor mansion with an underground pool and a garden at the top of house. My room is located on 3rd floor. It's size of a small apartment in some of more luxurious flats in big cities. Decoration is simple. Desk with a chair, table for guests with light brown leather sofa, and master bed for at least 4 people near the windows. Sigh, I still can't get used to this place. I mutter in a whisper and something's or someone reacted to that. I'm yet to see clearly, but while moving my hand I landed on something pretty soft and round thing, which made a sound like Munya. I look to my right and see my partner while on Grigori's mission, Raynor, or Ray as I like to call her. A pretty normal female, fallen angle normal as beautiful woman with jet black long hair and amethyst purple eyes, not to mention her curvy body. But why was she sleeping next to me in my bed? As she had nowhere to sleep I let her stay with me at this mansion, even gave her own room, so why? I don't recall anything happening last night. Issei Sama. So she got in on her own then, huh? Well, not that I mind, but Issei Sama for you to have such a kinky tastes, boy. What kinds of wild uncontrollable fantasies does this crow girl has? Not add they have me in it. Enough of this pleasant dream. Kick. Aw. I kick her of and after hitting the floor she gets up, looks at me and puffs her cheeks. Issei Sama. Why did you kick me of? And I finally had a very nice dream, which was getting to the best part. That's exactly why I woke you up. Or more like why are you in my room, sleeping in my bed? I shoot back at her. That's of course because I'm your slave and every slave should sleep with their master. In what kind of world do they do that? Besides, do you understand the situation you're in? Because of this whole church business you're on probation, not to mention I'm not your master but guard. Azazel decided to drop all the charges if you won't make troubles, so don't. She looks at me for a moment longer before breaking her puffed cheeks and smiling at me goofy and looking with the eyes of a predator. At that I look down and see that I'm missing my shirt, this pervert of an angel. It's no wonder she would fall with that kind of attitude. Get out of her, you hero angle. I shout at her and she quickly breaks into a run out of my room. Really, why do I get weirdos all the time and not a Nikki? It's been 2 days since the church incident. All members from FA faction that associated with Donasik's group have been interrogated and released if no evidence against them have been found. With this, the pro-war groups within Grigori have disbanded and started to appreciate the peace they live in. Engel's side had nothing to do with this, but the Catholic Church members have apprehended all the Rouge priests involved in the incident. Seems old man leaked information about them to the Engel's leader and got him to do some work. As for devils, both FA leaders and 4 great demon lords have talked the situation out, stating that they had no idea Kakabiel had such ideas or plans. Not to mention killing and stealing SG from humans, but including the fact that there has been an addition to young Gremory Hare's peerage. They decided to trust the heads of Grigori on this one. And so the very fragile peace has been protected. But still I needed to deal with the afterwards of it, such as my continuing protection of Ria's Gremory, guarding Raynor and still making reports for the higher-ups. Not to add school and other normal teenage problems. And speaking of school, I was now in classroom waiting for the homeroom to start. But with it start it meant more trouble for me and devils in the school. Okay everyone listen. Said teacher to gain attention of his students. Once again, we have a new student in our class. Enter. The door slid open, from which a teenage well-developed girl with waist-long dark hair and purple eyes entered and gained attention of every male in the classroom, with exception of Issei and Yodo. Hi. My name is Amasaka Ray. It's nice to meet you. Exclaimed Rayer as I knew her Rayaka Raynor. In order to observe her more closely I had her transfer into this school. Old boys started to shout about how cute the new girl was, as girls were divided into 2 camps, one admired how pretty and nice the girl was, 2 however were sticking daggers at the boys for acting like that in front of the new girl. As for the girl in question, she was at first looking around until she spotted me and her smile got even wider, but before she could create a scene I silenced her and have a sign to stay put until end of school day, which she listened to without a word. Unfortunately she wasn't the only one looking my way, or in this case, steering would be more correct word for her. Mia was still shooting daggers at me for not clearly explaining the situation to her for the last 2 hours. After she was reincarnated she was slipping in and out of conciseness. She finally woken up this morning to my dismay, as it seems that the red-haired ruined princess hadn't done her job as the king of her peerage and did not seem to explain the position she is now in. Me and my luck, normal POV. After school all members involved in church fiasco assembled in the Orc Club room for discussion. So. I had once died because a fallen angle extracted a sacred gear from me, which is an item created long ago by God as a gift for humans. But to save my life, Ria's one Sama resurrected me as her pawn, a piece of her peerage, in other words a server. And she could do that because she is a devil. I guess that's the gifts of it. Said Issei. An obvious reaction was a face of surprise mixed with not believing, and that was what Mia's face looked like. I realize that it's a lot to take in, but since you became a devil, I will need you to join a cult research club as an excuse if a need arises for you to leave classes during school hours. No, it's just I'm still having hard time believing I'm talking to Ria's one Sama and the rest of OCR members. Says their obvious fangirl. Still, for that fallen angle to go to this length to obtain your sacred gear, I wonder what it is, says Yodo, trying to change the subject of their discussion. Indeed, I almost forgot about it, Yufufu giggles Akeno. Interested? Mutters Kaneko. Since it's Mayamurus and I'm sure it's really beautiful. Says Asia. If she is in Kendo team then maybe it has something to do with swords. Gives a piece of her mind Zenobia. I don't think that's how it works, Z Zenobia senpai. Says Gasper. Well, actually according to Grigory's research sacred gears are influencing the owner, since little that's why you is so great at swords and I possess a very strong affinities for dragons. Going by that logic I don't think you're wrong, Zenobia. Informs the Issei. Is that so? Well then let use check that theory. Mia, try concentrating really hard and imagine an image of the thing that gives you most power. Orders Ria's form her chair. I will try, Ria senpai. But that said, Mia starts to imagine herself in the moment of winning the national kendo contest and becoming the strongest swordswoman in the world. Nothing happened. States dumbfounded Mia. Maybe it's too early for you, after all you have just been reborn as devil. Your evil pieces may yet be completely accepted by your body. Informs Rias. Is that so? To tell the truth I wanted to know what is inside me as well. Then should I help her? Asks Issei. Both girls state together as the rest of room looks at Issei with questioning looks. You can do something like that? Asks Rias. Sure. When Grigori gets a new SG user, if there are normal humans I help them active their power. But how? Is it not obvious? It's one of his powers as Red Dragon Emperor. Truly a rich devil girl such as yourself should probably know those kinds of facts, states Raynor. That presence was forgotten until now. But her statement was just a means to rough up young devil heiress. Did you just say something, Crow Cow? It's just as you heard, Batgirl. As both of them started staring at one another, sparks started to fly between them. At that, all present decided to fall back a bit, except for Issei. Stop it, both of you. Ray, they may not know about it, so don't speak like that to them. We are technically their guests. Hi, Issei-sama. Chippers Rainer. Hughes Rias. But ye. I can help. As he says that, his gauntlet appears and he places his hand on Mia's shoulder. It's more like I can increase your concentration for you to materialize your SG. Okay, says Mia, and once again tries to concentrate. Boost. Transfer. With that announcement, Mia's concentration increased dramatically and in front of her appeared a slender katana with red hilt and scarab. Ah. A katana. She yelps in catechism to examine it further as everyone else starts to gather near her to take a look as well. In that moment, Issei's phone started to ring and he decided to answer it outside as he saw who was the caller. Hello? Yo, Issei. Says a very cool and blunt voice. Nikki? What's up? It's rare for you to call me. Is something happening? No, it's just that Azazel wears me to pass a word. Seems that all three factions decided to hold a conference regarding Kakabiel's action. Some members of other side seems to be unsatisfied with the results. But still, if that's all, then I know Azazel would tell you either way, but they are getting restless and with this meeting they want answer from both of yous. I know. I have yet to make up my mind. I understand, but until this conference you should sort out your feelings and decide on it. I will be there as Azazel's escort. Until the foolish little brother. See you, stupid big brother. But that said line ended and Issei looked at telephone once more before putting it into pocket and looked out the window to see the sunset. Seems that more trouble are on the way. No one was able to clearly describe the spectacle played in front of them, as no one had ever witnessed such thing. Location was Kuo City's own prestigious high school, Kuo Academy, yet it was certainly not the everyday side of it. White School itself had few destroyed rooms, the scenery was enclosed in some kinds of a special magical barrier, around its ground were laying people dressed in body-covering robes, which made their gender hard to differ. But the purple sky, which was the effective barrier, from time to time lighted with two controversial colors. On the ground, group of people looked open the light show. In my entire life, Iria's Gremory was known as one of more powerful young devils of last few generations, yet all I could do in face of such overwhelming power was look upon it in amaze and tremble in fear, thinking, such beings actually exist. The destined clash of rivals that has been repeated for generations. A scenery of dashing red and white. Armors clashed, kicks and punches connected with each other, masses of magical energy had been fired only to be cancelled by a power of same volume. As battle was turning into a stalemate, both opponents decided it's time for more direct approach. They shoot themselves forwards and met halfway in clash of their fist coated in magic power. That clash ended with an backslash to both opponents, resulting in a big explosion. Their bodies hurled down to earth and both fighters stayed down for a few seconds, but soon enough both individuals and armors started to rise up from craters they created and their figures were clear enough to finally see. One was covered entirely in red armor with green orbs on each joint of his body and one giant orb on his chest. His armor was very sharp and from each gauntlet a yellow spike on out her side. His eyes were the same color as his orbs. His name was Issei Hayato, this generation's Red Dragon Emperor Security. To think that you grown in power so much from the first day we crossed fists. I'm actually proud, says the other armored individual. In contrast to Issei's red, his armor was pure white, with yellow highlights and blue orbs which were placed around his body at each joint, but most noticeable were the Parif wings made of pure blue energy that were sprouted at the back of the figure. His voice confident yet teared after the exchange the two had. Well, it's been a while since we fought seriously like this, Nikki. Answered Issei in the same tone as the white guy. He was a person that Issei was brought up with and looked up to him like a true brother, but fate in its twisted sense of humor decided that those two should be enemies, destined to battle one another until death. He was the White Dragon Emperor, Hakuryuku, named Vali. You have a point on that then. Should we continue this further, Atudo? Yeah, we should. Ani. Issei's sentence was stopped as all gathered expression changed to that of shock, even Val's face showed a surprised expression at what he saw. In the middle of Issei's balance break armor was an arrow that pierced his dragon scales without trouble. From his mouth Issei started to cough bits of blood and made one questioning sound, As his from reflected in her eyes, Ria screamed his name in fear, Issei. End of the part 2. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this movie with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.